Would I consider this to be good news when it comes to Zebec? Well, I would personally like to think so, even though nothing I say is financial advice. Well, the reason why is because Zebec recently announced how they're partnering with something called Lattice, and that's supposedly the first neobank built on the Canton network. Now, when it comes to Canton, if we take a look at it, supposedly its claim is that it's the only public blockchain with privacy that works, and I guess I'll take it at that. But you know what? Besides that point, though, Zebec does say that together they're going to be launching the Lattice card program. So I think that's pretty cool. And also on top of that, Zebec does say how Canton enables privacy preserving, compliant, and scalable settlement for institutions. So I think that right there is pretty cool. Again, Canton, I like its focus on privacy. And when it comes to Zebec, of course, we know its focus when it comes to the global trade and finance space. So I think this right here is actually a pretty cool partnership. Now, in the grand scheme of things, has this done much for ZBCN in terms of price? Not really. I mean, it's still around 47 and a half times lower than 10 cents. So it's actually not doing the best. However, actually at the same time, this type of stuff could matter later on because if we take a look at it, there's been a big shift, right, towards things that are focused on privacy, at least as of late. A lot of other projects out there are really focused on that niche. And I think it's a niche that really hasn't achieved mainstream attention yet when it comes to this space. But the thing is, what happens if it eventually does? Maybe. Especially if there was a hypothetical altcoin season. I think stuff like this does prepare Zebec well for a moment in time in which privacy does become a big narrative within this space because we've seen a lot of partnerships when it comes to Zebec in terms of projects that are focused on privacy. I talked about Alio in my previous video and the Zebec partnership that it had with that, right? And we also take a look at this one right here. You know, this one's pretty cool again with something called, again, Lattice, which is supposedly the first neobank built on Canton. So in the grand scheme of things, I think all of this is just pretty cool at the end of the day. And I think this type of stuff right here really does reflect well upon Zebec's, I think, effort. Because if we consider how Zebec allegedly only has over 25 team members, that's like not that many. And they're still able to kind of have these pretty cool updates, right? And pretty cool partnerships. So I do like seeing that. And especially if we compare Zebec to its closest competitor, which is called Onyx. I mean, come on, Onyx doesn't come anywhere close to this when it comes to what they're doing fundamentally. Now, XCN has more holders, and I'm actually a fan of Onyx, so I'm not saying it's bad. I think it's actually a project that I do like, but XCN has around 145,000 holders, while ZBCN does not have that many holders. It only has around 90,000. It makes up for it in terms of the partnerships, right? In terms of what we saw even not too long ago, what Zebec did with Algorand, right? We also take a look at Zebec, you know, having a partnership like this, for instance, with Lattice, and also not too long ago with Alio. So at the same time, what ZBCN may lose out when it comes to the amount of holders to its closest competitor, what it actually could win on is the diversity of the fundamentals, right? Because I feel like it's just doing a lot more things. Onyx, granted, it has some things as well going on, but its main focus is launching the mainnet of its layer 1 blockchain, which is called Goliath. Like, if we take a look at Zebec, it's just doing a lot more things, arguably. So, yeah, I mean, they kind of complement each other in a sense where Onyx, more holders, less fundamentally going on. ZBCN, less holders, but more fundamentally going on. So I think kind of evens it out. And Onyx also has more of a historical popularity, so that's kind of a little bit of an edge right there to Onyx. But still, at the end of the day, they're both still top 5 anyways when it comes to the space that they're in, global trade and finance. Number 1 is Ripple, of course. Number 2 is Stellar. Number 3 is XDC. Number 4, number 5, it could be argued. It's either Zebec or Onyx, depending on the day, depending on the vibe. You know, it could be argued both ways, right? So at the same time, they're still top 5 anyways, but I just wanted to kind of explain how basically my perspective is that while ZBCN may lose out when it comes to the holders, when it comes to XCN, it makes up for it in the fundamentals. Because sometimes you like to tell me, oh, Zebec's going to lose when it comes to Onyx. It just has way less holders, right? It has over 40,000 holders less. Okay, I get that argument, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, it may lose out on that, but it makes up for it in terms of the diversity of the fundamentals. Not to mention, ZBCN has holders like Circle, which is the creator of USDC, right? Keep in mind, Circle supposedly holds a pretty big amount of ZBCN. So again, less holders overall when it comes to ZBCN, but in terms of the quality of holders, sometimes people could argue it both ways, right? Because they take a look at Circle, which is the creator of USDC, and also we take a look at Solana Ventures, which is a backer when it comes to Zebec. So yeah, I don't think Zebec necessarily loses out in all fronts when compared to its closest competitor, which is called Onyx. But at the end of the day, I still believe in them because I kind of view it as an up and coming version of like a Ripple or Stellar of sorts, but just with a way smaller presence. I just kind of view it that way because if we consider, usually people think about Ripple or Stellar, right? They think about those two in tandem usually. But I feel like Zebec and Onyx, it's kind of the new sort of up and coming tandem within that space where previously it was Ripple and Stellar, but now it's kind of like a Zebec and Onyx type of vibe. Is Zebec and Onyx ever gonna replace or overtake Stellar or Ripple? I don't think so. That's gonna be very difficult. I don't think it could ever do that, but it doesn't need to, right? They're both still top five anyways. Again, Zebec and Onyx within the niche that they're in, which is global trade and finance within this space. So I don't think it's such a bad thing. But you know what? If there's a cool update when it comes to Zebec, I do want to talk about it because I just kind of feel like, okay, sure. Again, ZBCN's had a pretty big pullback alongside XCN and also some other projects too, of course. But I'm saying, even still, despite that, I still see activity when it comes to Zebec. So I really do like seeing that. And again, when people like to tell me Zebec's not really doing anything, sometimes they're doing things behind the scenes. Sometimes we only hear about it after they announce it, right? But we don't consider the work that they're putting on behind the scenes leading up to a partnership announcement. And also on top of that, what they may even be working towards as of right now, because we just don't know, right? Sometimes they do things behind the scenes. So I feel like sometimes there might be more than meets the eye when it comes to Zebec, which is why I'm still waiting. Now, ZBCN, in order to hypothetically reach 10 cents, it would need a market cap of around 9.8 billion. Now, that's if we consider the current circulating supply of ZBCN. However, here's the thing. Even though we're around 47.5 times lower than that, the thing is, reaching around a 9.8 billion market cap does not require, in my opinion, a project to be the greatest of all time. Like, for instance, if we take a look at it, let's just say for simplicity's sake, it's 10 billion, right? Because 9.8 billion, again, just 200 million difference from 10 billion, but let's just assume 10 billion. Like, that's around 8 times less than what Dogecoin reached at one point in terms of market cap back in 2021, and around 4 times less than what Shiba Inu reached at one point in terms of market cap also in 2021. Like, that is not a groundbreaking figure right there. A project does not need to ever become the greatest of all time to hypothetically see that market cap, again, around 10 billion, because we've even seen memes far exceed that. That's the thing. And that was even years ago, if I compare that example more specifically. Of course, Shiba Inu and Dogecoin also had their moments of brilliance during this cycle before the pullback, but I'm saying if I just compare it to 2021, that far exceeded a 10 billion market cap. But besides that point, Onyx doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, need to kind of lose in order for Zebec to kind of, have a presence, just because the niche that they're in doesn't have that many competitors to begin with, right? Like, if we take a look at Ripple, Stellar, XDC, Zebec, Onyx, we take a look at XPR, Swiftcoin, that's arguably 7 popular projects within this space of global trade and finance. And it's not like it's that many. If it was like 30 or 40 famous ones, okay. Maybe some might have to lose in order for the others to kind of, have a presence. But if it's like not that way, right? If it's not like so many competitors, sometimes, one project doesn't need to necessarily be forgotten about in order for one to kind of appear, like in terms of the popularity. Just because there's kind of relatively few famous options, yet the space historically has been kind of proven to have a pretty robust following. If, let's say, there's a hypothetical altcoin season, sure, maybe Onyx could gain some attention, but also maybe Zebec too, right? I mean, it's not like one has to lose for one to kind of appear like that in this case, in my opinion. It might be different in other niches, in other markets, but when it comes to this, just because there's so few limited options, Onyx doesn't need to disappear for Zebec to kind of do something, in my opinion. However, I just thought it was a pretty cool update that I saw recently when it comes to Zebec, so I wanted to talk about it, and yeah, that's pretty much about it, but I'll be sure to make more videos when it comes to Zebec, so hopefully y'all stay tuned for that. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace, bye.